So with me today, I have poet, author, educator and entertainer Rosie Garland. Hello, Rosie.
Hello there. It's really good to be in the virtual world with you.
Rosie, please, can you tell us which genre do you write in and how do you define that genre?
Right, that's a good start. Well, I write, I'm going to share, here's some I prepared earlier. I write poetry. I write flash fiction, sometimes called microfiction. I write essays. There's the latest collection. I write novels. In fact, I'm very lucky and I've had count them, three novels published. So that's all rather gorgeous.
That's absolutely beautiful. How long is flash fiction?
Sorry, say that again.
How long is flash fiction?
Right, how long's a piece of string? Some people say it's there are some places that say 50 words, but generally it's regarded as being up to 1,000. 1,000 tends to be pushing it. So it's sometimes called microfiction, sometimes called short fiction, and it's a form that I've been really enjoying and experimenting with for the past few years. So, and it's completely different to a novel. And I guess what I'd say is, as you can probably guess from what I've just said, I don't like to limit what I write or the form in which I write it. And I would suggest that to people. It's like, write the words, get the words down, and sometimes they will decide what form they want to take later. Sometimes I write something and it will decide it wants to be a poem. Sometimes I write something, it will decide it's the beginning of a short story.
Completely agree. And I think also it's kind of fun to experiment with these different forms just to see whether it actually works for you. Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant stuff. So what's your writing schedule?
Right. Well, I've been a self-employed, as in full-time, whatever that means, writer for about 8 years now, 9 years, which means for the other 492 years of my long existence, I have been a cleaner, a teacher, I've worked for a charity, I've worked as a crisis helpline worker, I've worked out in the world. And actually, I think that's really helped me as a writer. You know, I've never lived in an ivory tower. You know, I'm not one of these people who wears a big frilly white shirt and goes, oh, the pain of being a poet. And I really think that being out in the world has helped me learn about the world and has helped me get empathy for human beings. And I think that really informs my writing. Yeah, I never dreamed I would be a full-time writer. I just thought I'd be working for the rest of my life. And so the fact that I had a lucky break 8 years ago has meant that I can now dedicate my life to something I absolutely love. I'm one of those lucky people that I'm in a job I love.
Yeah, and I get what you're also saying about previous careers informing your writing. I've done that myself. It's not so much a checkered career as a paisley coloured career, isn't it? When you sort of
I like that, paisley. Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, worked as a cleaner, worked as a funeral director briefly.
Oh no, that'd be very fashionable.
It's and yeah, it's all grist to the mill. I should have said that. That phrase always puts me off eating. So, which is most important to you then, plot or character?
Well, I guess here's the quick answer. I'd say that's a bit like saying what's more important, water or food. Without either, you're going to die. I mean, you know, if you have a, you know, I'm good at doing plugs. If this first, debut novel of mine had no plot, it would be kind of boring because nothing would happen and who would care about reading it? And if it had no characters, again, who would care? It's like the characters help us really get involved in a story. It's like you have to care about what happens to the people in order to want to turn the page. So I don't think you can have one without the other. That's my personal feeling for fiction anyway. I mean, poetry, you can do what you want. And, you know, even in flash fiction, which, you know, I keep waving this, it's just out. It's a new collection just out. And I've got a piece in it that's 142 words long. And it's got 2 characters and pretty much the entire arc of a troubled relationship in 142 words. And I think you can do that in under 150 words, to be honest.
You make it sound as though microfiction and flash fiction are a lot more closely aligned with poetry than they are with prose, really.
I would agree with you completely. I don't think that personally, I don't find that flash fiction is a short novel. It can't be. A novel can go on for like 100,000 words and more, and a flash fiction's got to do it in a flash. And a really wonderful flash fiction writer called Meg Pockras, who I recommend to everybody, she says that flash fiction is a bit like poetry, but with the connective tissue added in. And I like that, the idea of thinking of skeletons, surprise, surprise. And the idea is that a flash fiction is like poetry, but it's got the connective tissue in it.
Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying there, and I shouldn't hear the words connective tissue when I was thinking of having something to eat later, because it's like with the grist line from before. Which also, with you mentioning Meg, that ties me into one of my later questions. Who do you read for pleasure?
Again, I could sit here and I could rattle off an entire list of names for the next 2 weeks, and it would all get rather tedious. There's a poet called George Safaris, and he has got this wonderful quote, which is, "A lion is made up of all the lambs he's digested, and I have been reading all my life." I'm with George on this one, and we seem to be having a bit of a food theme going on here without planning it at all, haven't we?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd go one step further and I'd say don't limit yourself to lamb, be omnivorous. I would suggest, you know, if you think of yourself as a fiction writer, go wild and read some poetry. Even if you think poetry, especially if you think poetry, I would go and, like, you know, I don't often recommend people do social media because, you know, social media getting sucked down the rabbit hole. But I have personally found that Twitter in particular has got a really warm and supportive writing community. Go and find them. Go and check out some of the, you know, I'm at Rosie Author, and I know that Ashley's going to give you links to these. But go and check out some of the folk that I'm connected with on Twitter, if you aren't already. And you will find a wealth of connections, places to send you material, ideas for writing, and read omnivorously. Read novels, read essays, read poetry, read flash. I also write song lyrics. Go and read song lyrics.
On that subject of, not on the subject of song lyrics, but on the subject of reading omnivorously, I fully agree with this. But what this is going to sound subjective because it is, but do you agree with the whole idea of only reading good material, or do you think read good and bad?
Well, I suppose you'd have to decide what's good.
Yeah.
It's bad. I'd personally say it's like, yeah, when you read, if you don't like something, which I think is different to good and bad, if you don't like something, I'd say try to work out why you don't like it. Ask questions of it. Ask questions of yourself, like, well, I don't like this because the characters are two-dimensional. I don't like this because I can't believe that X would fall in love with Y. I don't like this because it's too short. I don't like this because it's too long and the writer could have done with some useful editing. I don't like this because it doesn't speak to me. And also with good writing that you like, which might not be the same as good. If you like it, try to ask questions about why you like it. Do you like it because the writer is really good at cliffhangers at the end of each chapter that make you demand to read on? So ask yourself why you do and don't like things.
Brilliant advice. Thank you for that. Because yeah, I fully agree. It's like Lovecraft. I love Lovecraft's ideas, but when it comes to him writing dialogue, he can't. His characters are just so expository in the way they sort of like hurl information at one another. But yeah, it's just one of, I think he even identified that himself within his writing, because there's just so little dialogue within it. It's one of the things that I like about him. So on the subject of writing advice, what piece of writing advice would you give to anybody who's just starting out?
Well, I'll repeat what I said just then. Read. Stephen King says, like, writers who claim that they've got no time to read are a bit like climbers going up Mount Everest who've claimed that they haven't got time to get proper boots and a big coat. One of my favorite pieces of writing advice, I mean, because I don't actually think writing's magical. I don't think that writing stories is somehow this magical gift that is given to special people. I think, like everything, it's something that you can get better at by exercising. Like, you know, when I'm writing a novel, I think of it like a marathon. And if I was going to run a marathon, I wouldn't just kind of sit on the couch all winter and then expect to just put on a pair of high-heeled shoes and go out and run 26 miles. I'd warm up, I'd train. Terry Pratchett's really good about this. He said he sees writing like being a boxer, whether or not you like the image of people being combative. But he said it's like, if you were going to train to be a boxer, you'd get a good coach, you'd train, you'd get up early, you'd go down to the gym, you'd train, you'd go to boxing matches and learn from good boxers what makes them the greats. You'd go to boxing matches and work out why the other person wasn't as good. You'd go up, you'd go to the gym again and you'd train again. You don't just train once when you want to be a boxer. And I think Pratchett was, I really love the way Pratchett demystifies a lot of stuff. And I love that way of connecting writing to just being something that you can train at, learn from other people, listen to good advice from coaches who've maybe been boxers themselves.
Yeah, you can't help but love Terry Pratchett, can you? Yeah. And yeah, he was just so practical and down to earth in everything that he said. And even when you went through some of the elevated language, when you got down to it, there was just so much humanity there. It was, yeah.
Yes. Oh, and actually, but thank you for saying the word humanity, and I'd add something in there. Writing is a really solitary experience a lot of the time. A lot of the time it is your bum on a seat, on your own, writing. And so another thing I'd suggest for people that are starting out is find your fam, find your community, build a community. Again, you know, there are lots of lovely online communities that you can join. You might find a writing group based at your local library. Check out people that, you know, other students in your group. Maybe you want to start up a writing group with them. Maybe there's a writing group already at your college. Find a community and it will really help break down that isolation.
Absolutely, because yeah, it can get pretty lonely, sort of like sitting here in front of the computer, can't it? I was once at a writers' conference where when I was talking with, I think it was Caris MacDonald who said it. She said, when people ask her, where do you get your ideas from? She said, that one, she's sick to death of that question. More importantly, she wants to know, where do you get the willpower to keep your arse glued to the chair in front of the computer to get the words out? And yeah, that is the triumphant part. So you do a lot of work bringing writing to the community. Do you feel it's important for people to be given exposure to writers and writing?
Yes, obviously. You know, it's I think, like, without I think one of the fundamental things that make us human is story. And that story, for me, it started quite early, the idea of creating worlds through words. I was one of those lucky kids who was read to by my grandmother, and I learned, you know, I sat on her lap and she would read me fairy stories. And as a weird kid, listening to fairy stories, which were like, you know, impossible elsewheres and elsewhens, I learned of the power of language to transport me and us into the world of the imagination. And I can't stress how important I think that is, imagination and creativity as a way through. And let's face it, the world can be a very dark and mercurial place. Tennessee Williams, again, it's another quote. It's like Tennessee Williams said, the world is a mercurial and dark place, and it will have its way with you. And the one thing that gets us through is the love for humanity, but also the love of what we create, and the passion that we put into it. And I agree with that completely, as writing as a way through. Things are tough right now. Sometimes, I mean, I have heard somebody say, like, well, things are so tough, isn't writing a luxury, or, you know, it's just a bit fluffy at the moment. But actually, it's like, again, to quote Audre Lorde, amazing poet, poetry is not a luxury. It is a vital component of life. And it will get us through. It will get us through these current times. It will get us through other dark times. And it's got us through dark times in the past as well.
I can't agree more with that. I mean, you mentioned about us being a storytelling animal. Was that the title of Jonathan Gottschall's book, that we're the storytelling animal?
Quite possibly. Neil Gaiman's written some wonderful stuff about the power of story as well.
And I mean, if we just sort of like look back over the last couple of years with COVID, it was a horrific way that we were all in lockdown. We were very, very frightened. And the number of lives that Netflix alone must have saved, just by the fact that there were stories that were being translated to people. And yeah, I know that it's not exactly high art, but it's entertaining. It's sort of like that coherent narrative that we enjoy sitting down and watching.
And again, like, who decides what high art is?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I wouldn't have got through the lockdown if I hadn't been able to sort of like binge watch all of Drag Race, which was fantastic. Yeah.
I read something really heartening as well, that over lockdown, wasn't it something like sales of books in general, but poetry in particular, absolutely rocketed. And people don't do this because they've got nothing else to spend their money on, good heavens. But it's the idea of, one of the reasons I write is for connection, and connecting with people and communion. And it shows that that's what folk want. You know, I'm not just a writer, I'm a reader, and I read for communion and connection, and, you know,
yes, that's that's why the words go out there. So in your pamphlet, Everything Must Go, you drew on your experience with throat cancer. Do you think there are any subjects that shouldn't be covered? Do you think there are any subjects that shouldn't be covered in poetry, or do you think the medium's an acceptable mirror through which we can better see and understand the world?
Yeah, I do think we better. It's like I was talking about connection and communion. It's like the reason that I wrote that collection of poetry about cancer wasn't because I wanted to kind of stand on a big soapbox and say, you know, mine is the only experience of cancer out there, and therefore you've all got to shut up and listen to me. It was about sharing an experience that was difficult, but hopefully sharing it in a way that, again, going back to empathy, sharing it in a way that would help folk to understand. It might resonate with some people in terms of like, oh, you know, I'm not alone, going back to the idea of isolation and aloneness. And I think sometimes the most powerful writing is writing that speaks against the status quo. you know, the status quo of everything in the garden is lovely, everybody is white and privileged and able-bodied and heterosexual, etc., etc. And I think some of the most powerful literature is literature that goes against that easy grain and stands up and says, actually, you know, the world is a rainbow.
Yeah, and yeah, I think I get entirely what you're saying there, and I do think we need different experiences from people who've had experiences outside of our remit. I think for me, there would be nothing more boring to pick up a book by a bald, middle-aged white bloke who's just talking about his worldview, because do you know what? I know that one already. I'm more interested in sort of like much more diversity in them.
Yeah, I mean, and that includes bald white blokes, you know, it's like, but it's the idea of let's have everybody at the table and give, you know, and give everybody space, you know.
Absolutely. So I was reading a little bit about you. You spent 12 years with speech therapy, with a literary agent. Isn't literary a hard word to say when you're trying to? You spent 12 years with one of those agents who failed to place your books, and then you won the Dyslexia novel competition with Palace of Curiosities. Did it take a lot of courage to accept that your work was more deserving of publication than your agent was managing to prove?
I know I sound quite positive because I am generally a positive and optimistic person, but I'll be completely honest. I wrote 4.5 novels over 12 years, and it was actually for 3 agents. I went through 3 agents before I found one. And I'll be completely honest, that was, you know, those 12 years of rejections were tough. I really struggled to keep going at times, and would have struggled even more without a little help from my friends, as they say, and that community. And I found the encouragement of writing community and friends who believed in me even when I didn't, very powerful. And what happened, I mean, again, briefly, I'd been with this very reputable agency for 12 years, and they just didn't send my stuff out. I don't think they really got me or understood what I was trying to say. Certainly didn't give me any helpful editorial advice. And in the end, they just stopped replying to my emails. And so I thought, well, you know, I'm going to have one last chance, like last chance saloon. And, you know, if you want something done, do it yourself. And so I entered, you know, my 4th novel, which turned out to be The Palace of Curiosities. I entered it for the Dyslexia novel competition, and I was genuinely surprised and thrilled, not surprisingly, when it won, because I thought, well, this proves that my belief and my friends' belief that actually my writing was good was true. And those agents, you know, they're human, and they just didn't get me, didn't know where to aim me, and didn't have any faith in me. And I'm glad I kept going, but dear heavens, it was hard work. And, you know, I wasn't, it's, you know, my agent said, you know, nobody wants to read books set in Victorian circuses. And it went from a book that was supposedly unreadable to being published by HarperCollins.
With the Times and the Guardian saying nice things about you as well.
Yeah, and it actually went to a bidding war, so you couldn't make it up, really.
Yeah, and I'm just, part of the reason why I wanted to mention it wasn't to embarrass you or just to make a big point about it, but it's just, we get told by these professionals that, oh, for all of the students that are watching this, they will be sending stuff out and getting rejection slips. And I know I've had rejection slips in the past and thought, oh, my idea was absolute rubbish, it's crap. And I'm now past that most of the time, where I think, yeah, my idea didn't meet that particular person's needs, so I will send it out somewhere else. But it takes a lot of self-belief, and yeah, I know that for some people who are writing because they feel vulnerable, this is not exactly the right occupation, is it? It's
well, I'd say if it is what you want to do, then you've got to do it. It's like, you know, if you're consumed by the stories that you want to tell, you've got to tell them. I mean, and it could be that it's like it's about it's like if you have 5 readers who are absolutely passionate about what you write, that's success.
yeah.
If you have 100 readers who are absolutely passionate about what you write, that's success. I think we get told that success means you're on the Sunday Times bestseller list and make mazillions of pounds. And it's like, none of us do that. Maybe 1 or 2 people, but that's a bit like saying people who win the lottery. If you really need to tell your story, find the people who want to read you. And it might not be mazillions of people and earning mazillions of pounds on a bestseller list, but maybe that is a very narrow view of what success is. And one of the things that is really positive about the last 15 years or so is with the advent of online publishing, there has been a genuine democratization of publishing. It's like, if you want to, you can get your poetry collection or your memoir published on Amazon Books this afternoon.
Absolutely.
You know, you don't have to wait for massive publisher to notice you.
Right, Rosie, thank you. Today I've learned 2 new words, one of which was elsewhens and the other was mazillions. What are you currently working on, and where can we find more of your work?
Right. Again, the lovely Ashley is going to give you some links. I have a website, rosiegarland.com. I'm on Twitter at Rosie Author, and I'm very friendly and I talk to people. I'm currently, what I've got out at the moment is my new poetry collection, which is delightfully called What Girls Do in the Dark. And it's a nice cover. I like covers. So if people want to check that out, again, you will find the link in the chat. And I'm working on a new novel. I'm working on a film poem, would you believe, which is working with a filmmaker. She's making the film, I'm doing the words. And you know, that's really exciting. And I'm always writing new flash fiction. And you can read some of my flash fiction on my website. And I just love writing.
Rosie, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.